I now believe that he is unfit to be the Prime Minister of our country.
When was the last time that you heard Nigel Farage say anything positive about Britain's future? He can't. He doesn't like Britain. And the question I ask seriously of Nigel Farage and Reform is, do they love our country? Do they want to serve our country, all of it, our beautiful...
UK Connors, billionaire betting on Farage and Reform UK. Right, before we dive into today's absolutely cracking story, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. Seriously, we've got the inside track on UK politics that, frankly, the mainstream media keeps glossing over, and you'll want to be here when we drop these videos. Now, let's get into it, because this one is absolutely mental. Picture this. A billionaire property developer, the sort of bloke who's built ultra-luxury apartments where oligarchs and Russian oligarchs' mistresses live in London, walks into a room and decides to hand over £1 million, not to the Conservatives who've been in power, not to Labour with their fresh mandate, but to Nigel Farage Reform UK. And that's just the opening act. This is where British politics gets genuinely interesting, and frankly, where it gets properly tense. The billionaire in question is Nick Candy. Now, if you've been paying attention to celebrity gossip, you might know him as Holly Valence's ex-husband. Yes, that Holly Valance, the pop star turned actress. But that's almost a side note to who this man actually is. We're talking about the developer behind 1 Hyde Park, one of London's most prestigious addresses. This isn't some Instagram influencer throwing money at a political movement because it's fashionable. This is serious, generational wealth making a calculated bet on political upheaval in Britain. So what's the play here? According to Mr. Candy himself, it's an investment in UK PLC. Let that sink in for a moment. He's not framing this as charity. He's not saying he's doing it because he believes in democracy or civic duty, though he might well believe those things too. He's positioning a £1 million donation as an investment. That's a fundamentally different proposition, and it tells you everything about how the wealthy elite are starting to view Reform UK. Not as a protest vote, not as a fringe movement, but as a genuine alternative with the potential to reshape British politics and, by extension, the British economy. Nigel Farage's response was typically Farage-like in its confidence, but with a sinister undertone if you're paying close attention. 5 words posted on X. Nick Candy might be the first to donate £1 million to Reform, but he won't be the last. It's not a question. It's not hopeful speculation. It's a statement of inevitability. This is a man who spent the last few years predicting that he'd eventually be back in British politics, and now is watching his political gamble starting to pay serious dividends. Here's where it gets genuinely fascinating, and where the mainstream media has largely failed to connect the dots. Candy has pledged to raise between £25 million and £40 million for Reform before the next general election. Let me be absolutely clear about what that means. Reform currently has approximately £3 million in the bank since the last election. The Conservatives, with all their establishment machinery, their centuries of donor networks, their links to the city and corporate Britain, have managed to raise £9 million. Candy is genuinely proposing to raise somewhere between 3 and 13 times more than what Reform currently has. That's not incremental growth. That's a seismic shift in the financial landscape of British politics. And is setting interim targets. That's a detail that should be worrying established politicians. By the local elections next year, Candy wants £10 million on the board. That's not aspirational thinking. That's a specific, time-bound commitment with real capital behind it. This is a billionaire leveraging his wealth and his networks with ruthless efficiency, and is doing it with apparent confidence that he'll hit these targets. But why? That's the question everyone should be asking. Candy himself provides the answer, and it's remarkably candid. He's got 2 young daughters, 11 and 8. He loves the country, but is terrified. And here's the bit that really matters. He's watching wealthy people leave Britain. Monaco, Milan, Dubai, America. The wealth drain is frightening him. Now, you can interpret that in multiple ways. You can see it as genuine patriotism, a man concerned about his country's future. Or you can see it as something more pragmatic. A man watching his tax base erode, his business environment become less hospitable, his country lose competitive advantage. Probably it's both. The political geography here is interesting too. Candy's a former Conservative supporter. He switched allegiance to Reform last December. That matters. The Conservatives have hemorrhaged donors in recent years, and it's not hard to see why. They've been in government for 14 years, presiding over austerity, NHS crisis, immigration chaos, and repeated political scandals. Reform, by contrast, represents something genuinely different. It's new. It's insurgent. It's not tainted by the compromises and disappointment of actually being in power. And for wealthy donors like Candy, it represents a genuine ideological alternative, a party that prioritizes growth, tax efficiency, and what they frame as pragmatic governance over the tired consensus that's dominated Westminster for decades. The personal relationship between Candy and Farage is worth noting too. They met a decade ago on holiday in Montenegro, which is already a pretty telling detail about the circles these men move in, and they become close friends. Candy now praises Farage's ability to feel the heartbeat of a nation, his understanding of voter anger, and his instinct for political change. These aren't the words of someone making a transactional donation. This is genuine ideological alignment mixed with personal loyalty. Farage has always been good at cultivating relationships with moneyed people, and Candy appears to be exactly the sort of donor Farage has been waiting for: wealthy, ideologically committed, connected, and willing to deploy serious capital. What's particularly intriguing is Candy's concept of the reformistas, his term for younger generations of wealthy families now turning towards reform. This suggests a genuine demographic shift in donor networks. If Candy's right about this, then what we're witnessing isn't just one billionaire making a political statement. We're seeing the beginning of a broader realignment of financial support away from the establishment parties and towards a genuine alternative. That's genuinely significant for British politics. Now, let's be clear about the regulatory context here, because it matters. The Electoral Commission has already reported £500,000 of Candy's donations. There are reporting deadlines: October 30th for donations made between July and September 2025, and January 30th, 2026 for October through December donations. So there's going to be a gradual drip feed of disclosure about just how much money is flowing into Reform's coffers. This creates a narrative arc. Every few months, new donation figures will emerge, and they'll either confirm or undermine Candy's bold predictions about reaching £25 to £40 million. It's good political theatre, and it's going to keep Reform in the headlines. But here's what really matters underneath all this. Money in politics isn't neutral. It's not just about having more resources to spend on advertising or campaign operations. It's about power. It's about influence. It's about signaling to voters that an alternative is genuinely credible. When a billionaire like Candy puts down £1 million and commits to raising tens of millions more, he's not just funding a campaign. He's staking his reputation and his fortune on a bet that Reform UK represents the future of British politics. And that bet, whether you agree with Reformed politics or not, is sending shockwaves through Westminster. The Conservatives should be genuinely worried. They've lost a major ideological ally and fundraiser in Candy. Labour should be paying attention too, because if Candy's assessment about the wealth drain is correct, then there's a powerful constituency of successful people who feel like the current system isn't working for them. That's not a small thing in British politics. That's the sort of sentiment that can drive genuine political realignment. So what happens next? If Candy hits his targets, Reform will be operating with resources comparable to or potentially exceeding the established parties. That changes the game entirely. It means more advertising, more campaigning, more infrastructure, more candidates. It means Farage and his team can actually build something that's not just a protest movement, but a genuine political machine. This is the story that matters right now in British politics. Not the day-to-day Westminster drama, not the scandal du jour, but the fundamental question of who has power, who has money, and whether that money represents a genuine shift in how Britain's political elite views the future. And based on what Nick Candy's telling us, that shift is absolutely happening. If you're paying attention to British politics, you need to be watching this space. This story is only just getting started, and there are going to be massive developments in the months ahead. So subscribe, stick with us, and we'll make sure you're never caught off guard by what's actually happening at the heart of British power. See you in the next one.